Good morning. We'll go back to Department 1, People versus Robert Durst. Mr. Durst is present with Mr. DeGuerin and Mr. Chesnoff. We have Mr. Lewin, Mr. Milius, Mr. Bailey, and Mr. Henderson, and Mr. Miata present. Our jurors and alternates all have returned. The witness, Ms. Susan Giordano, has resumed the witness stand. Good morning. I'll remind you that you're under oath. And Mr. Lewin, you may continue with your examination of the witness.
Your Honor, did the court see Mr. Lewis's email this morning?
Yes, I did. And is that agreeable to you?
Yes.
So we are going to come in on, originally on Monday, there was a concern about starting, that we would not be able to start at 9, but the lawyers are on the, looks like they're going to have a stipulation as to that legal issue that was going to require a long hearing. They're going to reach agreement. I expect to approve their agreement, and that means we'll start right on time at 9 o'clock. The more time we get in, the sooner we finish. So that's why I try to encourage this. So strike on your calendars. Be sure that next Monday you come in at 9 o'clock. So thank you. And with that, let's be here now and resume the examination of this witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, I want to go back to an area that we discussed yesterday. Do you remember I asked you about a call that took place on September 20th, 2017? This was 7 months after you testified at the motion. And I asked yesterday if you recalled asking Bob Durst for $30,000 for a second car for your son, Tommy. And your response was that did not happen, correct?
Correct.
And then I also asked you if you discussed on that same call if Mr. Durst mentioned a concern he had that if he gave you money, that it could be viewed as, and he used the word bribe, and you said that he did not use the word bribe. That never happened, correct?
I don't remember. I really don't.
Code SG 118. Your Honor, while Mr. Millis is bringing that up, was the court able to fix the heating issue or no?
Clearly, I claim complete responsibility for our gradual improvement. I don't know. Apparently they found the problem, and we're trying to. I understood it was better.
Maybe it's just me. Am I the only one that's still hot right now?
Yeah, no, it's definitely hotter than it was.
May I have permission to take my coat off, Your Honor?
No? Okay. Well, you know, Erica, really, I rely on Erica to help me with decisions like that. So.
Wait, what, I didn't hear. What did she say?
She said it was okay.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
Overruling Mr. Balian's objection. All right. I know there was a technician in the hallway. I overheard him, but apparently it's much worse. It's emanating from that side of the building. So yesterday in the morning that was impossible, and by late afternoon that heat had moved in this direction, and it was getting worse and worse. I know we're trying to get some cross ventilation now to mitigate it, but obviously it's not entirely fixed. So, Mr. Lewin, you may.
I think they're
ready?
You know what I'm going to do?
You can go to the next subject.
Go to a different
Go to a different
area.
area.
Okay, I'm going to move to a different area.
Yes.
He's in trouble when he's asking me for technical.
That's for sure.
We've definitely hit desperation if Mr. Balian is assisting with the technical issues. So,
All right, gentlemen, can you take your seats while you work on that? Okay, go ahead.
All right, ma'am. I was asking you yesterday about a conversation near the end of your testimony that you had with Mr. Durst after he fled Houston after viewing episode 5 of the Jinx. Do you remember where we were with that?
Yes.
And he called you from New Orleans. Do you recall testifying to that?
Yes,
Did he ask you to do something?
yes.
What exactly did he ask you to do?
He wanted me to send him luggage that he had in New York.
If you can, ma'am, can you please, to the best of your memory, describe exactly what he asked you to do?
He asked me to go to his apartment in New York and send him a suitcase and to throw some things in it, clothes and shoes, things that he would need.
You previously were interviewed on March 18, 2015.
Yes,
And I would assume at that time, when you were interviewed, was your memory about specifically what Mr. Durst had told you, and that would have been within a week of the instructions. Was it better then than it is now, your memory?
I remember.
Okay, do you recall saying during March 18, 2015, quote, I went to his place, he said, quote, I have winter clothes. I have another bag at my house now with the other one. I said, well, I'm not carrying both of them, so I have one bag actually sitting in my house. And he said it was just clothes that he needed to be, warmer. Is that what happened?
Yes, there were two pieces of luggage, and I sent one, and I said I would send the other if he needed it.
And he told you the purpose of his call was, he said, I need winter clothes. Is that correct?
I just remember extra clothes, something that might be warmer, I said he might need, and shoes, because you don't want to buy new shoes. You
Well,
want to
ma'am-
wear comfortable shoes that you've had.
Ma'am, let me just ask you though, if you said winter clothes twice, and you quoted him as saying, I have winter clothes, would that have been accurate?
Okay,
Yes?
yes,
And this is in March of March, correct? 2015, correct?
yes,
And he's not in North Dakota, he's in New Orleans, correct?
yes, but I thought he meant he was on his way to New York, so he would have wanted something warmer. Right?
Ma'am, didn't you testify yesterday that Mr. Durst had told you that, in essence, he was on the run because of what had happened in episode 5?
Objection, Your Honor, this stands the testimony.
Overruled.
No, he never used the terms on the run. He just said, I'm coming to New York.
So he told you that things had gone bad for him, correct, during episode 5?
Yes, his words were something, yes, it wasn't going to be good or something like that. And he wanted to come home to New York.
Well, he said he had to leave, correct? He indicated he had to leave Houston.
No, not that he had to, it's not had. I didn't ask all those questions. He literally said, I just want to come home to New York.
So during the call, Mr. Durst in no way communicated to you that he was fleeing Houston. He was just telling you, I'm going to come visit you in New York?
Yes, I'm coming to New York. It was a brief conversation. I'm sure you've seen how long the conversation was, pretty quick. That was it.
Ma'am, and you're aware that Mr. Durst has since been interviewed and that he has said that he was fleeing Houston and that he was going to go to Cuba, correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that as well. I don't think that
What's the basis?
I
Grounds.
don't-
Grounds, succinctly.
fact's not in evidence, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll need an offer of proof.
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
We'll go sidebar. objection is well taken, but I'm going to allow the question.
And ma'am, I'm gonna go back for a moment, because now we're up, and I'm gonna go back to what I was asking you before regarding the questions about the $30,000 second car and the use of the word bribe. That's gonna be SG 118-92017, Mr. Milius, the exhibit numbers.
Your Honor, may we mark it as 216 and 216A?
Yes.
We gave you $50,000 about a year or so ago. I assume that's all gone? That's all gone, yeah. Yeah, okay, so how much should I tell them I want to send you? I want to get Tommy the second car, so maybe at 30, I could get, but is that too much? No, I have lots of money in my accounts. I'm not going to be spending. This call is being recorded. I'm not going to be spending anywhere near any of it, hardly. I'm happy to bring up where they're concerned is that you are theoretically a witness to the other side, even though you're a hostile witness. The other side is going to say we're trying to bribe you. So as far as I'm concerned, we already brought up, I gave you $350,000. So whatever it is, it's minutia.
Ma'am,
Yes,
that's your voice, correct?
yes,
So the first thing is, Mr. Durst mentioned that he gave you $50,000 a year ago. That is separate from the 300.
no,
So you're saying that's the same.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, and you said it's all gone. So, ma'am, I thought you said that you put the rest of the money, I think you said maybe $100,000 was to cover loan and tuitions for the kids. What happened to the other $200,000?
I had it written down, actually, and I sent it, so it was the $100,000 with credit cards. I mean, then I had $40,000 put towards the other property, so I wrote everything down, and then it was Louisiana. I had put, I don't know, it was like, I don't know exactly if it was the $30,000, Tommy's apartment there. He was in Louisiana or LSU at the time, and he set him with an apartment. and-
Ma'am, did you buy a house in Mr. Durst's name with that money?
No, we paid the architect, we paid out, and then the deal fell through.
Right.
So it was a loss of about, I don't know, it was a loss of about $35,000 between the architect and the engineer, and
So you got $350,000 from Bob roughly. You spent about $35,000 on lost cost, and then the rest of it went to support your and your children's standard of living, correct?
yes, it was to pay up what was owed, yes. I don't.
So what kind of second car did Tommy need that was gonna cost $30,000?
It wasn't, the conversation prior was other things that were involved.
Well, ma'am, isn't it true, you hit Bob up on this call, you basically said, hey, how about 30?
Right, as a total for whatever, but it certainly wasn't a secondhand car for $30,000.
Well, I would think it wouldn't be a secondhand car,
No,
maybe a
so-
secondhand
No.
Lamborghini, but
No.
not a secondhand car anybody else would drive.
No, and if you actually look, I mean, my newest car is a 2004, if you want to be technical.
Did you actually buy that one, or was that a gift from Mr. Durst?
No, I bought the
You bought that one.
2004.
So, ma'am, you also mentioned that there's no way that bribery came up during this call. You said it yesterday. Do you see Mr. Durst talking about that?
Yes, I do. I wasn't either paying attention. I don't know. I don't remember.
And, ma'am, that's not the only time that you and Mr. Durst have had conversations about the idea that if he called you as a witness, or if you testified as a witness, that the monies that you had been paid would make it look like he bribed you, correct?
I did, yes.
Let me ask, is it your position, ma'am, you said that you were an unbiased witness, correct?
Yes.
Do you think that the $350,000 that Bob has given you, do you think that in any way is a factor that it would be reasonable for the jury to weigh in assessing your credibility?
No.
Okay, let me continue, ma'am. So, we were talking about a moment ago the issue of Mr. Durst telling you that he was fleeing. Do you recall that line of questioning?
I recall.
So, ma'am, you have seen the New Orleans interview. You have reviewed that interview that myself and investigators did with Bob Durst. It's about 2 hours and 47 minutes in New Orleans on March 15, 2015. You've seen that, correct?
No.
You've never viewed that at all?
Nobody said anything to me, no.
Well, ma'am, you're aware that it was deeply covered in the national media, et cetera. You're saying you never saw it?
Objection, Your Honor, 352.
Sustained.
Ma'am, so is it your position that as you sit here today, you have no knowledge of Mr. Durst's statements regarding what he was doing and where he was going after he left Houston? Is that your position?
Yes. Yes.
So, ma'am, let me ask you something. When Mr. Durst asked you to send down, quote, his winter clothes, did you say, hey, Bob, why don't you just buy some clothes there?
No.
Did it seem strange to you that a multimillionaire like Mr. Durst was going to have you go to his house, pick up suitcases, and send them down to him? Did that seem strange to you?
No.
And it's your position that at the time he told you this, that he was supposed to be coming to New York?
I'm sorry. Can you just repeat that? I was just thinking of the shoes. Sorry.
Ma'am, didn't you say that Mr. Durst told you that he was supposed to be coming to New York to see you?
Yes.
If he was going to be coming to New York to see you, ma'am, why wouldn't he just get his winter clothes when he got there?
I didn't know if he was stopping anywhere along the way, if he was driving. Maybe he was stopping in, I don't know, another state that's close to the East Coast. I didn't question it.
You didn't question it.
And I figured if he needed anything, you could buy, but you don't want to buy new shoes because that's always uncomfortable. So I thought he would want shoes that were comfortable to wear, and I didn't ask him when he was actually going to be in New York. I didn't know. Could have been 3 days, could have been a week later. I didn't ask.
So what directions, by the way, did he give you with respect to picking up these suitcases? What exactly did he tell you?
He told me that in the closet there were suitcases, and just
Closet where, ma'am?
Excuse me?
The closet where?
In his apartment in New York, in Harlem,
And how did you get into that apartment?
with a key.
How did you have a key?
I always had a key. If he forgot something and he needed something sent to him that was in New York, I would have access to the apartment.
Ma'am, isn't it true that he had sent you a key very recently so that you could aid and abet him in his fleeing from justice?
Objection, Your Honor, 352.
Sustained.
Actually,
Well,
no.
don't
I'm
answer.
sorry.
You can ask it a different way.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
When did he give you the key?
I was saying I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
Sure. When did he give you the key?
Had a key for as soon as he had the apartment. I had a key.
Okay, ma'am, was it a month before?
Oh, 2 years, 3 years. It was. I don't know exactly how long, but it was over a year. Over 2 years probably.
I thought you said you hadn't spoken to Mr. Durst in 2 years before he ended up calling you from Texas or New Orleans. Is that correct or incorrect?
No, that's incorrect.
How frequently were you talking to Bob Durst during the airing of the Jinx?
I mean, we spoke at least every week, you know, whether it was an email or we physically spoke.
And I assume he was talking to you about the Jinx, correct?
Yes, not all the time. It was just, wasn't like the top conversation, but yes, we spoke about it.
Well, I know that one top conversation is you getting money from Mr. Durst. What other conversation would you have other than about this mini-series which is airing? What else were you talking about during the time the Jinx was airing on TV?
What everyone else speaks about. How are you? How do you feel? Talk about things that have happened in the past. You know, my family, my father, how he's feeling. Just normal conversation.
So let's talk about specifically what he was saying about the Jinx. What did he tell you when the first episode of the Jinx aired?
He asked me if I watched it. Honestly, he never said anything negative. He just asked me if I watched it.
And had you watched it?
I did watch the first episode.
And ma'am, would you agree that historically, on a level of 1 to 100, with 1 being Bob Durst has no interest at all in articles or interviews about him, and 100 mean he's obsessed and wants every interview and every story about him, where would Bob Durst be?
I would say in the middle. I think it's mostly curiosity. What other people viewed it, I guess, but
And ma'am, isn't it true that nearly every time there's anything that appears in a paper or on TV that Mr. Durst calls you and is asking you to watch it, to find it, to send it to him?
most of the time he wants me to watch it.
So, but you're just calling that an average interest, you said in the middle.
Yes, I mean, yes.
So you go to pick up these suitcases. Do you ask him what's inside?
No.
Do you pack the suitcases?
Yes.
So what do you put inside the suitcases?
I literally didn't pack neatly. I kind of threw just a few items and a pair of shoes, a shirt and sweater, his shoes.
Did he tell you where these empty suitcases were?
Yes,
And where were these empty suitcases?
in his closet.
Okay, so you picked up, was a red and a green suitcase, both empty in the closet, is that right?
Yes,
And then you packed them, is that correct?
correct.
Which one did you send him?
Oh my goodness. Red?
You sent him the red one, okay. Let me put these up now.
I think so.
People's next in order.
217, Your Honor.
Yes.
Ma'am, is this the suitcase that you picked up?
Yes? I think
And,
so.
and you packed that, and you said, what did you put inside?
Just like his shoes, I think a couple of shirts. It was really quick. My
Sure.
car was running outside, so it was really quick.
Marking 218. Ma'am, do you know what that is?
They're envelopes.
What's that?
They're envelopes?
Appear to be
Oh, I
envelopes.
have one behind me. Okay.
It's in front of you.
Yes.
This should be,
Yes.
I guess.
Envelopes.
What do I need to do? You can look at that. That's-
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
I want you to assume, ma'am, that when that suitcase was opened, underneath the clothes and the shoes were those envelopes?
Objection, Your Honor.
What, grounds?
Yes.
What?
Overruled?
I was about to say something, Your Honor, but
Okay, tell me again.
facts not in evidence, Your Honor.
Overruled?
Ma'am,
Yes.
I want you to assume for a moment that those envelopes contain roughly $115,000, that they were inside the suitcase when the FBI opened it.
Yes, that's what I was told.
Do you know how that got there?
I would assume it was in there. I didn't put it in there.
Well, ma'am, you just testified that you took 2 empty suitcases and you put clothes inside.
I did. I just threw everything in. Like I said, my car was running. Wish you had video. I was in there for probably 3 minutes, and I threw some stuff in, and I ran before I would get to it.
So, ma'am, let me show
If there
you.
were papers, honestly, in there, I didn't know. I even told the FBI agent that.
People's 218,
219.
19, excuse me, ma'am. When you open the envelope,
Wow.
do you see that? Was that in the suitcase when you packed it?
Did not look through anything. You would not see a fingerprint. I did nothing on there because I didn't touch anything.
220.
You could fingerprint, DNA, there is nothing I touched.
It's a lot of cash, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So, ma'am, can you explain how roughly $115,000 worth of cash got into an empty suitcase that you yourself had testified you packed?
Like I said, if it was in there and there were papers in there already, I didn't go through any papers. I didn't touch. You could fingerprint, DNA, whatever you like. I did not touch those envelopes.
Ma'am, that's why I asked you first if they were empty twice.
I mean, I didn't. It was dark. I was in his apartment.
Don't argue.
Ma'am?
No,
So-
you can't. Don't
Ma'am,
argue.
you testified, ma'am, that the suitcases were empty, correct? You just testified to that 5 minutes ago, is that right?
Yes, I didn't look in the bottom. It was a tall suitcase. I literally was in the building. If there was video for 3 minutes, I swear on my life. I took a few things. They were neatly packed. I threw them in there and I left. And if
Ma'am?
there were papers in there, I'm sorry I didn't look.
Ma'am, I just want to ask you,
I would have overnighted.
ma'am, you're saying that's what happened, correct?
That is what happened.
I want to ask you, if you were listening to that story yourself.
Objection, Your Honor.
If
352.
I can finish my question as the court has
Okay,
said.
I'll hear it, and I'll consider it for 352.
Ma'am,
Yes.
would you agree, ma'am, that even if your position is that that's what happened, that in listening to the story, it does not sound very reasonable?
Overruled?
No.
So to you, it sounds like a reasonable story that you took an empty suitcase that had nothing in it, that you packed it yourself, and that $115,000 turned up in that suitcase underneath the clothing, but you didn't know it was there. That sounds reasonable to you.
It's reasonable because it's what happened.
Okay, ma'am, and your position is that Mr. Durst didn't pack anything, you packed it all, you've previously testified, correct?
I'm exactly right. I put clothes. I didn't look at the bottom of the suitcase. And if there were papers in there, I would have thought they were papers. I didn't look through anything.
Ma'am, you saw the number of envelopes, correct?
Excuse me?
So let me show you again, ma'am.
Now I see envelopes like that. I mean, it look,
Ma'am,
okay.
you're telling me that you missed that in the suitcase?
If there was, like I said, if I thought there were papers in it, I certainly wasn't going to go through it. I don't remember because it was dark. I threw things in there, and that was it. I didn't go through anything. I didn't question him what was in it. I just sent it.
Well, that's a fact that we've not heard before. You're now saying it was dark. Did
Oh,
you
yeah.
pack, so did you pack the stuff in the dark? You didn't turn on a
Well, it was very dim.
dim. Could you see what you were doing, or were you kind of just...
Objection, Your
Well,
Honor. 352 cumulative.
Overruled.
I just wanted to get out of the apartment, so I literally, for 3 minutes, and if there were papers in there that he didn't need, he could just throw them out. I didn't look. There could have been receipts for all I know. I didn't look through anything. I told you that. You could have done anything.
Okay,
And there's
ma'am.
not a trace of me in there.
So, ma'am, and according to instructions then, you then mailed took this package over to can't find it here. To UPS, excuse me, and you sent it to Bob Durst in New Orleans, is that right?
Yes. Actually, I didn't actually pack it. I left it there for them to pack it. I left the suitcase on the counter and I left.
Well, when you say you left for them to pack it,
Yeah,
meaning you just gave them all the loose things inside and handed
I
it to them?
gave the man there the suitcase. I left it there. I said, do you box and do all of that? And he said, yes. I said, can you do that for me? And he said, yes, I'll pack it and box it and send it.
So
So I
it's-
left it on the counter.
So it's your position, ma'am, that you gave the UPS guy
Yes.
envelopes that contained $115,000 and he just packed them up for you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah.
State's facts. The witness did not testify. She said she left the
That's not an
suitcase.
objection, Your Honor, that's a speaking objection, which the court has said the court doesn't want.
Okay, maybe if Mr. Lewin could go back to the lectern and not be screaming in my ear, it might help me think better, Your Honor.
Mr. Lewin, you should use the lectern.
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
Please use the lectern.
Well, I'm coming over because I'm having different photos put up, so,
Okay, and then return to the
all
lectern.
right?
And you may ask a question.
That was, I did, it was overruled, I assume, Your Honor?
Yes, overruled.
The question was asked, can it be read back, please?
It's your position that you gave the UPS guy envelopes that contained $115,000 and he just packed them up for you?
Yes.
Ma'am, are you aware that there are laws that govern sending money through the mail?
I didn't know there was, first of all, money in there. I didn't know what was in there except the clothes that I sent. So no, and I left it on a counter and walked out.
So you left a bunch of envelopes that you originally didn't know were there on the counter for the UPS guy to pack, and then it's your testimony that he packed these envelopes and the rest of the material and sent them to Mr. Durst? Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Let me ask you something. Again, ma'am, I know you're saying that happened. If you were listening to that story yourself, does that sound to you to be reasonable?
Objection 352, Your Honor.
So the witness testified that she was unaware that the envelopes were in the suitcase. She gave the suitcase to the UPS man to put into a box.
Right.
Your question suggested that she handed the envelopes. So
No.
the idea is that the envelopes, whether or not she knew, are inside. You're suggesting that she did know, but the envelopes are not separately given to the UPS man. The envelopes are inside of the suitcase, according to her testimony, I believe. You can clarify that if you'd like.
Ma'am, that's why I asked you, when you gave the UPS guy the stuff, you gave him all the separate stuff, correct?
No,
Oh, you just gave him the suitcase?
I gave him a suitcase that I threw the clothes in, and then he said, bring it to UPS, and I didn't have a box or anything, so I gave it to the gentleman. I left it on the counter. He said he would have it out by the end of the day. I said, okay, thank you. And I left.
I assume, ma'am, the UPS person would have asked you if you were sending any contraband, et cetera, inside the box, correct?
UPS, maybe, but I was sending clothes.
Did you give him a value at all? Did you discuss what was in it?
I honestly don't remember.
And ma'am, so you then had them send it to Mr. Durst, is that correct?
Yes.
Are you sure about that?
Well,
People's next in order.
one of his names that he uses. Just,
Oh, okay, so you actually didn't have him send it to Mr. Durst. You had him send it to an
I'm
alias.
sorry. Well, I didn't hear the answer.
The answer was, I sent it to a name that he used.
oh,
No.
yes, one of the names he would use.
And this is 221. Thank you.
So, ma'am, so
Not that particular name, but
So Bob Durst calls you and says, I need my winter clothes, but I'm coming up to New York. I'm in New Orleans. Do you know if it was winter or snowing in New Orleans at the time or no?
No, I didn't know anything. No.
So he tells you I need my winter clothes, but he's also coming to New York. And then he says, send him the suitcases.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and by the way, pick them up and then send it to a phony name. One of the names I used.
Well, not that particular name. I just never heard that name before, but I also didn't know he used to live there, so I don't know if he's with somebody else or he just wants to use a name. Just don't question it because it's Bob.
Right, well, ma'am, it's Bob, and Bob sends you a lot of money, and you're not gonna question anything he tells you, are you?
I don't think I would question anybody. It was a very brief conversation. Gave me an address and a name and asked me to do it, and I did it.
Do you know who Everett Ward is?
I don't know.
Did you ask Mr. Durst, hey, why am I sending it to somebody named Everett Ward?
Nope. Minute conversation, if any, and I didn't ask.
Ma'am, were you not aware at the time that Everett Ward was the name of the individual that is in testimony in this case that actually bought the bow saw from Farmers Marine at Chalmers back in 2001?
No, I didn't know.
Were you aware that Mr. Durst was actually registered at the JW Marriott under that alias as well?
No, I didn't know.
So, all right, so you send this down there, and ma'am, it just so happens then that the money that you were not aware was there happened to be hidden under the clothes and the shoes. That was just coincidence?
Yes.
So you grab the clothes and tennis shoes. I just want to be clear. You're not disputing that the money was inside there, correct? Just want to make sure that you're not disputing that, are you?
No. I don't
Okay.
know.
So the money is inside, all those envelopes full of cash, $115,000 approximately. You don't notice them, but you previously testified that the suitcases were empty twice. And then you throw shoes and clothes on top of it. And it just so happens that those shoes and clothes happen to kind of cover up the money. That's just coincidence?
Yes.
Okay, so you mail it down to Bob Durst. I'm sorry, well, you mail it down to Everett Ward. Did you check with Mr. Durst? Did you ask him, by the way, if there were two suitcases, what did you put in the other one?
There were more clothes.
Is there any money in the other one?
I can look. Eric, FBI agent, Eric Perry, took it. So I really don't remember what was in that other one.
So afterwards, you end up turning over, eventually, the second suitcase to the FBI, is that right?
Yes, he was there that day.
And ma'am, do you remember exactly, as you sit here, do you remember specifically what you did and how you arranged the items in the suitcase?
No, I don't. It wasn't neat.
SG036, Your Honor.
222?
This is going to be from March 18th, 2015, page 47, line 24 to 28, 28 to page 48, lines 1 through 15.
Your Honor, 222, 222A.
Yes. And 222A, that's written.
Grabbed the bag and the shoes, like on the top. Okay. And they look like just clothes. He told me to, just get them clothes. He said I have them packed. So he had one green bag and one red bag. He said, no, red bag. Okay. So I just left it at the UPS place. Okay.
You didn't go in, you didn't look at the clothes or anything like that?
No.
Packed it up and stuff, so you don't really know what's in it then, right?
Well, it was one on top of the shoes.
Okay. But you didn't get obviously you didn't look inside the shoes or anything like that? Okay.
No.
Ma'am,
Yes.
that's not what you just testified to, is it?
Yes, I threw the shoes, yes.
Ma'am?
And the other bag, I think, had clothes in it. I don't remember.
Ma'am, you said that Bob Durst told you, quote, I have them packed.
Yes, and then, no, there was like one thing or something. It was empty. There was nothing really, socks, I think, maybe were in it. There was really nothing there. It was
Ma'am,
not like when you open it, you go, oh, there's clothes.
So when you told the FBI agent that Mr. Durst had already packed it, you agree that's not what you're testifying to today, correct?
The green one, I didn't pack the green one, so if the green one had the clothes, I don't actually remember. I know I took warmer things because there was a sweater, and I threw the sweater and I said, get shoes because they're comfortable. You don't want to buy new shoes that aren't comfortable.
So ma'am,
So,
you agree that on the clip I just played for you, you were very clear. You said at the time that you didn't look at the clothes.
I just literally didn't really see exactly what I packed. I threw a sweater, a shirt, and shoes. Actually, I didn't pack anything else.
And clearly, ma'am, you would agree, ma'am, you certainly looked inside the bag and packed it because you were able to explain what was inside of it, and if you had never looked inside, you wouldn't have known. You agree, correct?
Whether, like I said, I didn't know if it was papers or anything. I knew there were no clothes in there, but I don't look through anybody's things.
And in fact, you were even able to say that there were shoes on top, correct? You remember there were shoes on top in the bag.
Yeah, before I left it at UPS, yes, I know the shoes.
And ma'am, I just want to ask this just very clear.
Yep.
Is it your position under oath today
Mhm.
that you had no idea that that money was inside the bag?
Right.
I couldn't hear that, ma'am.
Exactly. I didn't
Okay.
know there was.
Okay, you're continuing to speak, and if you're gonna say something, say it loud enough so the jury and the reporter can hear it, all right? Otherwise, don't.
Sorry, just thinking out loud.
Do you remember being interviewed by investigator Joe Becerra he came on March 15th to pick up the boxes, correct?
Yes,
And then, but he didn't interview that day, right? He just got consent and he picked up the boxes, is that right?
yes,
Then he came back the next day and he interviewed you, is that right?
yes.
So, did you tell Detective Becerra on March 16, 2015, that the last time you had had contact with Bob was after episode 5?
Yes, I don't remember, but
All right. SG012.
Your Honor, may we mark that as 223 and 223A?
Yes.
When was your last contact with Bob? Steve, either in person or?
After the episode, after episode 5.
After 5?
Your Honor, can we get a date as to when this?
Repeat the date, please, of that.
March
16,
16, 2015. It's actually on the slide.
Oh,
It says March 16th, that's right.
thank you, Your Honor.
Ma'am,
yes,
that clip, ma'am, that
Yeah.
clip, you said that your last contact with Bob was after episode 5, and that was more than a week before he interviewed you. That's not what you testified to today, correct?
I don't remember the exact dates. I don't remember if he left before episode 5. Didn't watch it, so.
Well,
I
Ma'am,
have to, yeah.
when he called you to ask you to send him the suitcases,
Yes,
was he in New Orleans?
I believe he was there already.
Well, you testified previously, ma'am, that he told you he was in New Orleans, and that he told you to send the boxes to New Orleans, correct?
I didn't send any boxes.
Excuse me, thank you, the suitcases to New Orleans.
Yes,
Well, ma'am, so my question is that if you had a conversation with Bob Durst while he was in New Orleans, then that's long after episode 5 is over, correct?
okay.
So you lied to Investigator Becerra, correct?
No,
Okay.
no. I don't know if he was in New Orleans or he was on his way there. I don't know. The conversation was a minute. Whether I spoke to him right after the Sarah or I don't know all the episodes because I didn't see them. I don't know what had aired.
Okay. What date did you send the packages?
I don't know the date.
Does this refresh your recollection?
That's what your exhibit is not.
It says March 12th. Does that sound about right?
And that's, we're about to show.
Yes, it was-
221.
Yeah, yes, it was,
People's 221.
I know it was a couple of days before I actually got everything sent out and I spoke to him, but
So there's you, correct? And there's where you sent it, is that right?
yes,
And there's already been a stipulation that Bob Durst was arrested on March 14th. So you're sending this on March 12th. Do you agree?
okay, yes.
So ma'am, if you're saying, you're telling Detective Becerra when he asked you when your last contact with Bob Durst was, and you're talking about episode 5, how come you don't tell him that I just talked to Bob Durst and I just sent him a package?
Well, I spoke to him like quite a few days before then. It just took me a long time to get to Manhattan, and then I didn't go to the place right away. I was going to go to UPS. I was first going to pack it, and then I waited a couple of days, and then, so yeah, I spoke to Bob after that I know.
I'm going to get to that in a minute, but my question is, why didn't you tell Investigator Becerra that you sent Bob a suitcase and that you had spoken to him? Did you just forget?
No, because that was a week before I spoke to him.
So,
I mean,
ma'am,
it just took me a little bit to get there. It wasn't around the corner.
ma'am, you actually spoke to Bob, you have said, the day that he was arrested, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
So, ma'am, if you sent this on March 12th, if you spoke to Bob on March 14th, the day he was arrested, how come when Joe Becerra interviewed you only 2 days later, on the 16th, how come you're telling him that the last time you spoke or had contact with Bob Durst was after episode 5, which occurred, ma'am, on March 8th? Can you explain that?
No.
Ma'am, how
I don't
come?
even remember speaking to Bob the day he was arrested, so I don't remember that.
Ma'am, how come you didn't tell Investigator Becerra that you had sent Bob Durst a suitcase?
He didn't ask me if I sent him anything. I don't know.
So
I
you're,
didn't speak to Bob, though, for a week before that. I mean, we didn't speak.
so ma'am, it's your position that you were not trying to hide the fact that you had sent this suitcase full of money, because number one, you didn't know there was money in there, and number two, you weren't trying to hide it. Is that your testimony?
Yes. I didn't know there was anyone was even really looking for him.
Ma'am, isn't it true that you didn't mention the suitcase at all until March 18th, 2 days after Investigator Becerra, when you were interviewed by Special Agent Eric Perry of the FBI? Is that true?
That's true.
And isn't it true, ma'am, that even then, you didn't mention it until Agent Perry told you the following, quote, "I can't stress enough that you need to be crystal clear with me right now about what you did and what you tried and what stuff you've sent to Bob, because what I have in here isn't going to look very good for you, okay? So why don't you tell me about the last thing that you sent to Bob and when?" That's at page 42, line 21 to page 43, line 2. Do you recall that conversation? Do you need me to hand it to you to read?
No.
Okay? So that's what Investigator Perry told you, correct?
Correct.
And once he said that, you knew, uh-oh, the FBI is here, and they're basically telling me if I tell any more lies, I could be in trouble.
Objection, Your Honor, 352.
What, 352?
Any more lies, Your Honor?
I didn't
Sorry,
say
it's,
any.
Robert. That's coded, so it's not specific.
Ma'am, is that true?
He asked me, I answered him. He asked, and I told him yes, and Actually, Eric Perry said I should have looked through it because there could be a gun in there. And I said, well, I certainly hope there isn't because I didn't look through it.
Well, except you said you packed it completely and it was empty.
Right, I said, I'm sure there's not a gun in there. And he said, well, you didn't look through it.
Okay, ma'am, isn't it true that you responded to Agent Perry, quote, "The last thing that I sent to Bob, oh my God, I sent him this, he wanted his clothes." That's at page 43, lines 3 through 4. It is immediately after the last portion I read. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Once again, did you reiterate to him that all that was inside the package was the clothes?
Yes.
Ma'am, let me ask you this. Were you aware, I'm asking you if you knew, were you aware at that time that if you had sent Bob Durst that kind of money, that potentially it could be a crime?
No.
So in your mind, you had no reason to deny anything because there was nothing wrong with sending $115,000 hidden beneath clothes and shoes in a suitcase to an alias of another individual. That was your position. You thought that was okay. No alarm bells went off.
No. I didn't know there was money, so why did I think I would do something wrong?
Okay. As you sit here today, ma'am, hearing this scenario, does it make you say, gosh, that does sound a little suspicious?
Objection, 352, Your Honor.
Overruled.
You can answer, ma'am.
Like I said, I didn't know if there was money in that. No, I wouldn't have sent it, and I certainly wouldn't have sent that kind of money. Or would I have sent it and left it on a counter?
Ma'am? So my question is, a moment ago you said there was nothing wrong with sending that kind of money, that you didn't know that it was...
I didn't know.
So then why would you say, had you known, you wouldn't have sent it?
That's a lot of money to send through, leave on a counter, or I could have just sent it a different way, in PayPal, or I don't know. I didn't think I would, like I said, I didn't know there was, first of all, I just didn't know.
So in hindsight, your takeaway is, I could have sent him the $115,000 through PayPal.
Like anything, right, if he needed money, I would have just sent it. I didn't ask, I didn't question anything.
Let me go on to my next topic, ma'am. How did you find out that Bob Durst had been arrested?
I don't remember.
Ma'am, on March 18, 2015, at page 54, line 27, to page 55, line 5, you had the following exchange with Agent Perry. When was the last time you had a conversation with him? You responded, Saturday. Agent Perry, this Saturday? Okay. You respond, Saturday. Agent Perry, so Saturday he was arrested. You respond, yeah. So you had a conversation with him the day he was arrested, correct? You need to answer out loud, ma'am.
Yes.
So when you said a moment ago you're not even sure that you spoke to him on the day that he was arrested, does that now refresh your recollection?
Yes, now that you told me.
And ma'am, you have previously said, when you were interviewed, that there was no way that Bob Durst would take off, correct?
Correct.
Do you now know that statement that you made, that there's no way that Bob would take off? Do you now know that statement to be inaccurate?
No.
So ma'am, I want you to assume for a moment the following. I want you to assume that Bob Durst has stated during his March 15, 2015 interview that he had with myself and investigators that he was fleeing from Houston and that he was planning on leaving the country and going to Cuba. Would that statement from Mr. Durst, would that affect your opinion that Bob Durst would never just take off? Would that affect your opinion?
Still no. I mean, he might have said that. I really thought, and I still think that he was coming to New York to see me. What he decided to do after, okay, whatever he told you. But as far as I knew, and I believe him, that He was just gonna come meet me in New York, and whatever he decided after that, I don't know.
Okay, when you found out that Bob Durst had been arrested, you actually yourself attempted to recall the package, correct?
Yes,
Ma'am, why would you, so Bob Durst is arrested, and you're going to recall a package that's just full of clothes. Why?
he's not there, so you just reverse it, come back.
Right. So the first thing you're thinking when your friend Bob Durst has been arrested is, you know what? I better head down to UPS, and I better get those packages of clothes recalled, correct?
No, I didn't head down anywhere. You just do it on the computer, and you just say, return to sender.
Ma'am, isn't it true that you knew there was $115,000 in there, and you wanted to make sure that that money was not gotten by individuals who were not you or Bob Durst?
No, I do not know that kind of money is in there. Not know.
Right, so you asked that it be recalled. Did the package come back to you?
No,
Because the FBI, you found out later, they got it, correct?
correct.
Did you ever visit, I want to go back to after Bob Durst was arrested. Did you visit him while he was in jail in New Orleans?
Yes,
Did you speak to him on the phone constantly while he was in jail in New Orleans?
in New Orleans?
Yes.
I'm sure we spoke. I don't really know how often.
Oh, I want you to make an estimate. You think it was 1 time, 5 times, 20 times, 50 times? What would be your estimate?
I don't know, maybe once a week? Maybe, I don't.
You think that was it, only once a week? Would it surprise you if it was substantially more than once a week?
No, it wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know exactly.
Oh, well, let me ask you, was it fair to say that you and Mr. Durst were speaking very frequently while he was in custody in New Orleans?
Okay.
Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes,
And ma'am, did you visit Mr. Durst in New Orleans in June 15, 2015?
yes,
Did you take your son Tommy with you?
yes.
Did you guys drive down Tommy's very expensive $30,000 second car?
No,
No. By the way, what car did Tommy get with the 30 grand?
we didn't get it.
You didn't get it.
No.
So why did you take your son Tommy down to visit Bob Durst?
Tommy was moving to Louisiana, and Tommy knows Bob.
Right, and Tommy's hit Bob up for money through you, correct?
Tommy's never asked me to ask Bob for anything.
Wait a minute. I thought that part of the reason you got money from Bob Durst had to
Yes,
do
but
with...
Tommy did not ask me, ever.
So
to
you
ask
just
him.
decided that you would hit up Bob for Tommy, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so you visit Bob in Louisiana, is that correct? I want to ask you, during your conversations with him, either in person or on the phone, did you ever ask him about anything related to Susan Berman's case? In terms of his involvement, what he did?
no,
All right, I'm going to go to a different area. Would you agree that Bob Durst has expressed to you repeatedly that he is very concerned about Nick Chavin's testimony, and that goes all the way back to his March 2015 arrest?
he asked, no,
Did Bob Durst ever express concern to you that Nick might, quote, bury him with evidence in this case?
no,
Did Bob ever tell you that he was, quote, sick to death, that Nick was going to say something to the prosecution that was very bad for him?
I don't recall.
Did you ever say the following to Nick Chavin,
Date, please.
referring to Bob? This is going to be Nick Chavin's interview, April 8, 2016. Page 6, lines 24 to 28 to page 7, lines 1 through 6.
It's Nick Chavin's?
It's Nick Chavin's interview saying what Susan Giordano allegedly said to him. So, ma'am,
Impeachment by collateral.
overall,
This one, buddy, how's this thing?
ma'am, did you ever say to Nick Chavin the following? That Bob told you, one moment, that he's very worried, very, very worried, and that you yourself, that I'm sick to death thinking about it, that Bob said he's going to bury me. There's something bad he's going to say, something bad. Did you tell Nick Chavin that?
No.
So let me ask something, ma'am. Is this a no definitely, or is this a no like some of the other no's where you end up saying, well, I didn't remember? In other words, do you have a definitive memory? Can you sit here under oath and can you say, I absolutely remember that I never told Nick Chavin that? Can you say that?
Yes, because all I said was that he was worried about him because he never contacted him. He wasn't speaking to him. And
So ma'am, so it's,
no.
so you're not saying then that you didn't talk to Nick Chavin, you didn't talk to, Bob Durst about Nick Chavin. You're simply saying that Bob Durst commented about Nick Chavin, but didn't mention anything about being scared to death or worried about his testimony that Nick had something bad. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you also deny saying to Nick Chavin, what do you think that means about Bob Durst? Do you also deny that as well?
Yes?
Ma'am, were you concerned, strike that, did Bob Durst express concern to you that he was worried very early on that Nick Chavin was talking to authorities?
No.
Has Bob Durst ever expressed concern to you that he was worried that Nick Chavin was talking to the authorities?
No.
And I want to be clear, ma'am, are you saying absolutely definitively Nick Chavin, Bob Durst did not tell me that, or are you saying, you know what, I don't remember, Bob might have told me that, but I don't remember? I just want to be clear that we establish which is it. Are you saying I don't remember it, but it could have happened, or are you saying it absolutely did not happen?
I don't remember. Nick just kept trying to call me all the time. And Bob wanted to know why Nick was constantly calling.
I want to ask you.
We do need a break.
Sure, this is a good time.
All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to come back at 10:35. Do not converse among yourselves with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. Don't discuss your testimony with any other witness during the break. Our jurors have left the courtroom. There was an objection about collateral impeachment. If this witness said something to Nick Chavin, I presume that the people are prepared to call Nick Chavin to prove the statement if she denies it. She must be confronted with the statement, so it's appropriate, most appropriate for her to be confronted now by that, so she need not be on call.
Most of this, I think, Your Honor, some of this, Mr. Chavin actually already testified to.
That's fine. I overruled the objection. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Good job.
counsel are here. Our witness is Giordano, that's resumed the witness stand. You're under oath. You make it.
Thank you. Ma'am, the following questions that I'm going to ask you, I'm not asking about a specific time. So I just want to know, the answer to this is, has Mr. Durst ever said this stuff to you? And I don't care about the timing. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay. Has he ever expressed concern to you that Nick Chavin might bury him with evidence in this case?
No.
Has he ever expressed to you any concern that Nick Chavin has incriminating evidence that might impact him in this case?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that the defense wanted to know what Nick Chavin had said to me?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that the defense was determined to find out what he was going to say in court?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that Bob's lawyers had told you that they wanted to know if Nick knew that Bob was being extorted by Susan?
No.
Do you have any knowledge of Bob Durst being extorted by Susan?
No.
Have you ever said to Nick that Bob is, quote, sick to death that Nick is going to say something to the prosecution that is very bad for him, unquote?
No.
Have you ever said anything similar like that to Nick Chavin at all?
No.
Meaning ever involving any concern that he's going to share information that he has that is damaging to Mr. Durst?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that he was the most pivotal, important witness in this case?
No.
And ma'am, are you aware of the questions that I just asked you? Have you been asked those before?
No.
Ma'am, do you recall that on February 15, 2017, page 81, line 27 to page 82, line 27, that I asked you the identical questions in court? You don't remember that?
No.
All right. Have you in any way ever discussed the case involving Susan Berman, Kathy Durst, or Morris Black with Nick Chavin?
The case itself, no.
Now I'm asking what you've discussed. What have you said to Nick? You said the case itself. What have you said to Nick regarding Bob Durst, Susan Berman, Morris Black, or Kathy Durst?
Your Honor, foundation, please, and time frame.
What?
Also cumulative as well.
Overruled. Do you understand my question?
I do, and it's 25 years that I know Nick, 30 years, but I told him the last time we spoke that Nick said, actually Nick called me.
Ma'am, I'm not asking what Nick said to you. I'm asking, what did you say to Nick Chavin?
Well, it was response to Nick's question, but I said, well, then you should reach out to the defense. That's the only thing I said to him.
So, ma'am, have you ever had a conversation with Nick Chavin where you discuss the facts of Kathy Durst's disappearance?
No.
Have you ever had a conversation with Nick Chavin where you discuss the facts of Susan Berman's murder?
No.
Have you ever had a conversation with Nick Chavin where you discussed anything relating to Morris Black's death and dismemberment?
No.
So, ma'am, you're saying that when you were interested in dating Bob Durst back in 1987, that you never asked Nick Chavin, hey, Nick, so Bob's wife disappeared and never came back. You never brought that up to him?
No, because I thought, according to Nick, he made a joke out of it. So I thought she left him.
Ma'am, I assume you were aware that Kathy Durst was a couple of months away from graduating and becoming a doctor. Were you aware of that?
Much later.
So, ma'am, so at some point in time, did you become aware that Bob Durst's wife, who was about to become a doctor, disappeared off the face of the earth, never to be seen again?
Like I said, much later, yes.
And when, much later is when? When did you become aware of that?
When, like in 2000, I guess.
So, ma'am, through all of your conversations, correspondence, visits, you've never had a conversation with Bob Durst about his missing wife?
No. I mean, conversations like where they went on vacation, mostly good times he had with her, but nothing about her disappearance.
So you've never even inquired to ask him, hey, Bob, what do you think happened to Kathy?
Objection, Your Honor, 352, cumulative.
Overruled.
No.
Ma'am, as you're sitting here, listening to your testimony, I just want to ask you, does that sound at all to you a little bit strange that the person that you have said is your best friend, that you want to get a love nest with, that you want to spend the rest of your life with, that you've never had one conversation about his missing wife? Does that sound strange to you?
No.
Have you ever had a conversation with Mr. Durst about Susan Berman's murder?
No.
Now, you became aware in 2000 that Bob Durst was the prime suspect in Kathy's disappearance, correct?
No. It was after that. They were reopening the case, but I think it was after the Morris Black that he was.
So you didn't see any of the stories in November and December of 2000 that talked about Kathy Durst's case being reinvestigated?
That's correct.
But you did know about it, and you did know that Bob was the prime suspect during the Morris Black situation, correct?
Yes.
And you're saying that's now approximately 20 years that not one even conversation about what happened to Kathy with Bob?
That's right.
Okay, Susan Berman. When did you become aware that she'd been murdered?
I don't know. I don't know. It was sometime, I guess, during the whole Morris Black thing. I wasn't speaking to Nick much, otherwise I would have heard it from Nick. So.
Now, isn't it true that you have repeatedly tried to influence Nick Chavin's cooperation and his testimony in this case?
Oh, no.
Did you, in fact, call him numerous times prior to his testimony in 2017 to tell him that he should talk to Bob's lawyers? It's a yes or a no question.
I'm going to say yes.
And did you ever, ma'am, did you ever make those inquiries at Bob Durst's direction?
No.
So how did you know anything then about what Nick Chavin might or might not know that you are asking him to call Bob's lawyers? Why?
Nick called me. Nick would try to contact me, and he told me that we need to help out our mutual friend, exact words, had nothing nice to say about the prosecution, and that he had to help out. We had to get together to help out our mutual friend. And I told Nick it was better that we don't speak,
Okay.
just that he should speak to the defense.
And you're aware, ma'am, are you aware that Nick Chavin came in and testified in his hearing in February of 2017, among other things, that Bob Durst confessed to the murder of Susan Berman? You're aware of that, correct?
I am aware of that.
All right. I want to ask you, did you ever tell Nick Chavin that Bob's lawyers were aware that he and Bob had seen each other in the year before Bob was arrested, and that they wanted to know what Nick and Bob had talked about?
No.
So, did you ever say to Nick that Bob's lawyers told you that they were aware that Bob and Nick had seen each other in the last year, and they wanted to know what you guys talked about? Did you ever say that to Nick?
No.
Now, you're now aware, ma'am, that there was a dinner that Nick Chavin has testified about where Bob Durst confessed to him, correct?
Yes.
But you're saying you never brought that up to Nick Chavin.
No, Nick Chavin called me.
That's, ma'am,
From that dinner.
It's a yes or no question. Did you ever bring it up to Nick Chavin, yes or no?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that the defense specifically wanted to know what he was going to say in court?
No.
And did you tell Nick Chavin that they want to know what you know about Bob and what you told or are going to tell this guy Lewin?
No.
And let me ask you, ma'am, the no's that you've been given, are those no's absolutely, I'm 100% certain that I never said that to Nick Chavin, or are those no's, you know what? No, I don't remember.
No, I know exactly what I told Nick.
So you're absolutely certain?
I told Nick to contact the defense. I don't know what they wanted to know.
That's not what I asked you. You have said no to a series of questions about what you said to Nick Chavin. So I'm asking you, ma'am, are you 100% certain that you did not make those statements that I asked you about to Nick Chavin?
The only statement was that wasn't those exact words. I said to them that they wanted to speak to him because whatever outing they had that night, that he should speak to the defense. I never asked, the lawyers never spoke to me.
Ma'am, listen to my question again.
Okay.
Ma'am, please listen to what I'm asking you.
Okay.
You answered no to a series of questions that I asked you about what you had allegedly said to Nick Chavin. Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
So what I'm asking you now is, are you 100% certain when you say no that you did not say those things to Nick Chavin? Or is it a situation where you are saying, you know what, to the best of my memory, I can't recall telling Nick Chavin that? Which one would it be?
I'm going to say, because the last two, I don't recall the last two questions. But
Now, I can go through, I asked you
Fine.
8 questions,
okay.
and of what you allegedly said to Nick Chavin, and you said no. Do you want me to read each question? I can do that. Or are you able to say, overall, is it a situation when you say no to those questions, that it is no, I absolutely did not say that to Bob Durst, or is it no, to the best of my memory, I didn't say that to Bob Durst?
352, he is quite relevance, Your Honor.
Exactly.
Vagueness, no foundation, cumulative.
It's compound, but I don't really want to hear all 8 questions. We can do that.
No, but they've already been asked and answered.
Okay.
It's a different-
Are you sure is a different question? So
Ma'am.
you may,
Exactly.
go ahead,
Ma'am,
proceed.
so listen, ma'am. I don't want to
Exact
ask,
words, that's my question.
I don't want to answer the question, ask the question a third time. I want to just make it clear. So all I'm asking you is, you gave no to those questions about what you said to Nick Chavin. So it's a very simple question. Are you saying, as I sit here, I'm absolutely certain that I did not tell Nick Chavin that? Or are you saying, you know what, to the best of my memory, I don't think I told Nick Chavin that, but I can't say for sure. Which would it be?
Can I ask a question? To clarify? Can I ask a question to clarify? Is those my exact words?
Ma'am, it did, okay, so let me say it
It
this
might
way.
be easier if you just go through
Sure.
the 8, it'll go faster.
Yeah.
Are you sure, are you sure, are you
I think that's
sure?
what we'll do.
Okay.
We'll do, Your Honor. So, ma'am, has Mr. Durst, did you tell Nick Chavin that Mr. Durst expressed concern to you that he might bury him with evidence in this case? You said no. So my question is,
No.
are you saying, and here's my question, not those exact words, but did you say something similar to Nick Chavin? And the answer would be, no, I absolutely did not say that, or no, I don't remember saying that, but I can't say for sure. Which would it be?
No.
Right? The second question, did you ever tell Mr. Chavin that Bob has expressed concern that he has incriminating evidence that might impact him in this case? Would that be an
No.
absolute, ma'am, let me finish. Would that be an absolute no? Or would that be a no to the best of my memory?
It's an absolute no.
Okay? The third question would be, did you ever say to Nick Chavin that the defense wanted to know what Nick Chavin had said to me?
No.
Did you ever tell Nick Chavin that the defense was determined to find out what he was going to say in court?
No,
Did you ever tell Nick Chabin that Bob's lawyers had told you that they wanted to know if Nick knew that Bob was being extorted by Susan?
no,
And those are all meaning no, absolutely, I'm 100% sure.
yes,
Did you ever say to Nick Chabin that Bob is, quote, sick to death that he's going to say something to the prosecution that is very bad for him, unquote?
no,
Did you ever say to Nick Chabin anything similar at all involving any concern that Nick is going to share information that he has that is damaging to Mr. Durst?
no,
Did you ever tell Nick Chabin that he was the pivotal, most important witness in this case?
Is this before your interview with him?
Ma'am,
This is the problem, because it was two
Ma'am,
different conversations.
ma'am, listen to me. Ma'am,
I'm
be
gonna
clear.
say I don't recall.
Ma'am, so let me be clear. I'm not asking you when you said it. I'm asking you, did you ever say to Nick Chabin?
Yes,
So you did tell him that he was the most important witness in this case.
yes,
So when I asked you that question the first time, you said no, correct?
correct,
When you were asked this question on February 15, 2017, this identical question, you said no, correct?
right. This is because timeline, that's why I'm gonna. Yeah.
So, ma'am, was there something confusing about the following question? Did you ever tell Nick Chabin that he was the pivotal, most important witness in this case? Did you find that to be a confusing question?
Because of the timeline and recollection of a conversation, it's taken out of content for me, just, so I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
Because it was after.
Ma'am, is your certainty when you have said no, your 100% certainty, is that the same level of certainty you had when you originally testified today, twice, that those suitcases were empty?
Yes,
And now, ma'am, you've conceded that in fact, you were wrong about the suitcases being empty, correct?
Argumentative, Your Honor. 352.
yes.
Did you ever say to Nick Chabin that Bob's lawyers wanted to know what side Nick was on?
No,
Did you ever get any information, ma'am, from any source that Susan Berman was, quote, extorting Bob Durst?
no,
Did you ever ask Bob Durst anything about Susan Berman extorting him for money?
no,
So if Nick Chabin is testifying that you mentioned Susan Berman extorting Bob Durst for money, you have no knowledge of that.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Thank you.
Sustained.
What was that?
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm not asking for it's not for the truth of the matter asserted. The question is, I'm not asking, the question is not whether it's true, it's whether, in fact, it was asked.
What?
Hold on.
It's also an argument, Your Honor.
Certainly not hearsay, and it's not argument.
Hold on.
Your argument.
Objection sustained.
Your Honor, may I go sidebar and explain the question?
Yes.
And Your Honor, could you read the question as it's phrased? I don't have it in front of me, so when I go to sidebar.
If Nick Chabin is testifying that you mentioned Susan Berman extorting Bob Durst for money, you have no knowledge of that.
Yes.
Okay, let's go. objection is sustained, you may rephrase your question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ma'am,
Yes,
Nick Chabon has previously stated that you asked him if he was aware, Nick Chabon was aware that that Susan Berman was extorting Bob Durst. Did you ever say that to Nick Chabon?
no,
Were you ever aware that Susan Berman was extorting Bob Durst?
no,
Did you ever have a conversation with Bob Durst about that?
no,
Are you aware, ma'am, that there has been evidence in this case that Susan Berman had information about Bob Durst that was damaging and that Bob Durst was sending her money? Are you aware of that?
no,
You have no knowledge in the years that this case has gone on that there is an allegation that Susan Berman was killed because she had information about Kathy Durst, that she had helped Bob Durst with an alibi, and that she was getting money from Mr. Durst. This is the first time you ever heard of that today?
heard of it together, yes. It was separate. I didn't think the money had anything to do with that. Is that?
Well, ma'am, so,
Can't answer. It was.
so were you aware, ma'am, that there was evidence in this case that was being presented that Susan Berman had falsely helped Bob Durst manufacture an alibi?
Objection, Your Honor.
Again, there's no grounds, it's just objection.
I'm speaking. It's
Okay.
hard. I've got this constant thing bombarding me in the back. 352, Your Honor. It also assumes facts that have not been presented. It's a theory.
That's not an objection, the last one, the other two are not.
Your Honor, can I ask you a favor?
Yeah.
Could you
No,
please
let's,
be the
we'll
one
come back.
be the one to correct me?
Let's go,
May I continue, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ma'am. Ma'am, is it your position that even after watching the Jinx, the episodes that you saw, that you were unaware that the allegation that was made in the Jinx was that Susan Berman helped Bob manufacture an alibi and was murdered because of it? Is that your testimony? You were unaware of that until your discussion in court today?
No, I was aware of it after the Jinx.
Okay, ma'am, the Jinx ended on March 15th, 2015.
Well,
That was the day that Bob Durst, day after he was arrested. So you would agree that any conversations you were having with Nick Chabin about Bob Durst's case, arrest, etc., had to have taken place after that date, right?
yes.
So my question to you is, ma'am, so how is it that you just testified a moment ago that you did not know that there was an allegation that Susan Berman had been extorting Bob Durst?
I didn't know anything about the extorting.
Well, ma'am,
I don't,
so here's my question. Were you aware that the allegation in the Jinx, you read articles in this case, correct?
very few, very, very few.
You watched Datelines at Mr. Durst's request in 48 hours and sent articles, correct?
Dateline.
Ma'am,
I'm
Ma'am?
telling you, I don't, you can see the letters I wrote him, I don't normally read the newspapers, and I don't, unless he had told me.
ma'am,
I'm
do
sorry.
you want me to pull up clips of conversations when you and
Objection,
Mr.
Your Honor.
Durst talk about?
352.
The what?
Sustain, just
Ma-
do it or don't.
Ma'am,
Make a decision.
ma'am,
Yes, yes.
have you had conversations with Mr. Durst while he's been in custody where you talk about articles involving this case?
Yes,
So ma'am, so my question is, are you telling this jury that you were unaware until today that there was an allegation that Susan Berman was extorting or blackmailing Bob Durst?
Asked and answered, cumulative. 352.
Over.
yes, I'm telling you, I didn't know anything about extortion. I didn't, it was, I read that he had given her a gift once, I think. I don't even know, I don't.
Ma'am, so you would agree that the Jinx presented, in the miniseries that you saw, that the Jinx presented information that Bob Durst was in essence being blackmailed, extorted by Susan Berman because of information that she had about Kathy Durst's disappearance and her cooperation manufacturing an alibi, and that Mr. Durst was giving her money. You agree that that was covered in the Jinx, correct?
I didn't see what episode that was. I've never seen, and I've spoke to Andrew Jarecki 2 years prior to that, and he never said anything about extortion.
So, ma'am, so how was it that you mentioned the word extortion to Nick Chabin?
I never mentioned the word extorting.
Okay. All right, let me move on to my next area, ma'am. Did you ever tell Nick Chabin that you knew, and that the defense knew, and that Bob Durst knew, that, quote, you've been talking to that guy, John Lewin, unquote? Did you ever say that to Nick Chabin?
No.
Ma'am, that's a long pause
Yeah,
answering
because
that question.
no, I'm trying to exactly get it right, that's why.
Is that a no absolutely, or is that a I don't recall no?
Never spoke to Nick, didn't know that Nick spoke to you.
That's,
So I never,
okay. How'd you find out about Susan Berman's murder?
it was the time, I think, her murder, I really don't remember. It was probably around the time of Morris Black. I didn't read it in the paper And it was sometime after her death.
Ma'am, were you aware that Mr. Durst had always, until December 22nd, 2019, denied that he was ever in Los Angeles at the time of the murder? Were you aware of that?
Yes,
And ma'am, you are now aware that Mr. Durst has said not only was he in Los Angeles at the time of the murder, that the defense in this case is he found the body. Are you aware of that?
yes,
Did Mr. Durst ever mention that to you?
no.
So when you heard that all of a sudden, after always denying for 20 years that he was in Los Angeles, when you heard that he was now saying, hey, I found the body, did you ask him about it?
No,
Did that seem strange to you, ma'am, that all of a sudden it was a completely different version of events that he'd been telling you for 20 years?
no,
Ma'am, you are aware that Nick Chavin and Bob Durst had a dinner in Manhattan in 2014, correct? You're aware that that dinner took place?
yes,
And you're aware, and listen to my question very carefully, yes or no, you're aware that that dinner took place because Bob Durst has told you that dinner took place, correct?
Nick called me from that place.
That's,
So
motion to
no, he
strike is,
didn't.
motion to strike is non-responsive.
Stricken?
Ma'am, listen to my question. Has Bob Durst ever confirmed to you that that dinner took place?
Yes.
Okay. When did you become aware, ma'am, when, that Bob Durst had confessed, according to Nick Chavin, at that dinner, or after that dinner? When did you become aware of that?
Whenever he was in court.
Have you ever asked Bob about it?
No,
Why not?
because Nick's, well, I didn't ask him. It was from Nick.
Ma'am,
Your Honor, could you
Yes.
ask the witness to answer the question?
she answered the question.
Well, I couldn't actually hear the last few things she said. You were mumbling a little bit. Did
No,
you-
I didn't ask him.
Thank you. Ma'am, did Bob Durst bring up the idea to you of providing him with a false alibi for the week that Susan Berman was murdered?
No, no.
Ma'am?
I said it was a misunderstanding because I didn't speak to Bob then, and I specifically said that he should know, it's hard to know, I didn't know where I was, I said to him on Hanukkah, so I don't know if you would know where you were on Christmas Eve, but we didn't speak to each other until 3 years later, so he didn't ask. It was-
Ma'am, listen to my question. I did not ask you when this happened. Listen to my question. Did Bob Durst ever bring up to you the idea of providing a false alibi for that time by asking you to say that he was with you and your family during Christmas of 2000?
No,
Ma'am, didn't you originally volunteer this information during a recorded interview with Jarecki and Smerling on March 15th, 2015?
out of context, if I could explain, I said,
Ma'am, that's a yes or a no
No,
question.
Your Honor,
No.
could the witness be allowed to answer?
no,
Okay, ma'am, did you say to Jarecki and/or Smerling that Bob had called you from Galveston, told you that he was not with anybody, but that he, quote, has to be with someone, unquote, because he was not where everyone thought he was the night of Susan's murder? Did you say that to Andrew Jarecki and Mark Smerling?
I don't recall that.
But ma'am,
Uh,
when you say you don't recall it, I want to be clear. Is your point going to be that I said it, but that I misunderstood, or that that's not what I meant, or are you actually disputing that you said it?
You're saying he said, I really don't recall. I don't recall that conversation.
Did you tell Mark and Andrew that Bob said to you, I have to still be with someone because it will make it go away, at page 31, line 7 of the interview? Did you say that?
I mean, Bob didn't say that to me. I might have said it, but Bob never said it to me.
So what you're saying is, yes, I said it to Mark and Andrew, but when I said that Bob said it, that was mistaken. So you're saying I said it, but it was incorrect.
Yes.
Okay, and let me go back, ma'am, and I assume that you also would agree that you told Mark and/or Andrew Jarecki that Bob had told you that he was not with anybody, but, quote, has to be with someone during the time of Susan's murder. You agree that's what you said to Andrew Jarecki and Mark Smurley, correct?
I might have, yes. I don't.
Well, ma'am, when you say you might have,
I never spoke to Bob about
Okay.
that, so
ma'am, I'm not asking what Bob told you now, I'm asking what you said. Did you also tell Mark and Andrew during that same interview that Bob asked you where you were that night and what you were doing during the holidays?
no.
Did you also tell Mark and Andrew that Bob told you, that you told Bob in response that you were at a large family gathering on Christmas Eve in New York, but that he had nothing to worry about if he wasn't at the scene of Berman's murder? Did you say that to Mark and Andrew?
No. Oh, wait, I might have said it at a conversation, but that didn't have a conversation with Bob included in it. No, I might have said to him, yes, because, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Did you tell Mark and Andrew during that 3:15:15 interview that you responded to Bob, that you told Bob, quote, to just be with Debbie, since it was only a month after they got married? That's at page 31, line 19. Did you say that?
Probably said you should have been with Debbie, so how could you not be? And
Ma'am.
it's not the holiday, so.
Did you say that?
I don't recall. I don't recall.
Did you further say, ma'am,
What's the date of that one? Mr.
March, this is all from the March 15, 2015 interview.
6 years ago.
Yes, that would be 6 years ago, Mr. Chesnut. You told them, correct, that Bob told you, start that, you told that, that Bob said to you in response to your comment of just be with Debbie, that Bob said that although it was only a month after they got married, that Debbie, his wife, had already told someone that she didn't think Bob was with her that night. Did you say that to Jarecki and Smurley during that interview?
I don't remember.
Did you tell Jarecki and Smurley that Bob told you that for that reason, he could not say that he had been with Debbie when Susan was murdered? Did you say that?
I really don't remember. I don't remember. It was a conversation. It wasn't an interview, so I don't really remember.
You were asked about this issue again during your April 18, 2015 interview. Is that correct? You ever been asked about that, ma'am?
I don't, what was April? Where was I in April?
Having a conversation with myself and investigators at your lawyer's office in New York. Do you
Okay.
recall that, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall that this issue came up during that interview?
Yes.
I'm gonna play SG052.
Your Honor, maybe we mark that as 224 and 224A.
224, 224A.
Do you remember telling investigators that you thought it was odd that Bob needed to say he was with someone on Christmas? If he didn't kill Susan, there wouldn't be any reason for him to say that. Do you remember telling investigators that? Yeah.
Does that refresh your memory, ma'am, about Bob Durst telling you that he needed you, he wanted you to provide him with an alibi?
No, he was never involved in this whole thing at all. I said it, my opinion. He and I have never had this conversation. It would have been on a recording in jail. Never, ever mentioned Susan Berman.
So ma'am, I want to go through this. The question is, do you remember telling investigators that you thought it was odd that Bob needed to say he was with someone? You responded, yeah, correct?
Yes.
That question asks you, do you agree, ma'am? It asks you why it was that you think it was odd that Bob had made this request of you, correct? That's what the question says.
Right, but he didn't make any, Bob never asked me. I don't understand.
Then
This
why
is
did you say
my
yeah?
opinion.
Why did you say yeah?
Because you said if he didn't kill her, there would be no reason. You're right. There would be no reason for him to worry about where he was.
Ma'am, that's the second part of the question. I want you to look at the first part of the question. Do you remember telling investigators that you had thought it was odd that Bob needed to say he was with someone, meaning that you had previously made the statement and you said yeah?
Yeah, no, but I didn't speak to Bob about it. This was my opinion, and it could have been anybody. It didn't have to be Bob, it was anybody. I didn't speak to him at all about Susan Berman. And Andrew Jarecki asked me a million times. I didn't speak to him.
SG053, April 18, 2015, page 32, lines 3 through 6.
And Your Honor, can we mark that as 225 and 225A?
Yes.
You're saying to Bob something to the effect of, hey, listen, Bob, I can't say you were with me. I was at Christmas with 30 people. They're going to know you weren't there.
Right.
Does that refresh your memory, ma'am?
Yes, I exactly said, actually, to Detective Becerra, I think it was. But it wasn't, like Bob said to me once, everybody needs to know where everybody is. Something like that. But he never once requested it. I just said, if you were with me, you would remember. I have a very large family, and I know where I am every Christmas Eve. But he never once would ask me for an alibi. We never spoke of an alibi. We never spoke about Susan Berman, ever.
So ma'am, when you were asked the question, do you remember saying to Bob something to the effect of, hey, listen, Bob, I can't say you were with me. I was at Christmas with 30 people. They're going to know you weren't there.
No.
Are you telling me you never said that to Bob?
Never, never.
So, ma'am, is there a reason why you followed up the question with right?
Right, I'm saying, but not, I didn't have the conversation with Bob. I'm saying in general. And I've never, ever had a conversation. He never asked anything like that of me, ever.
Ma'am, so at the time that this issue was coming up,
Yes,
you were aware that Bob Durst's version of events was that he was not in Los Angeles, correct? You were aware that his position was, I was not in Los Angeles. You were aware of that,
yes,
correct?
yes,
You were aware that his position at that time was, I did not write the cadaver note, correct?
yes,
You were aware at that time, ma'am, that his position was, I did not find Susan's body, correct?
yes,
And in fact, ma'am, are you now aware, were you also aware, ma'am, that Bob Durst had repeatedly stated, were you aware, you said you watched the Jinx, that Bob Durst had said that the cadaver note was a letter that only the killer could have written? Were you aware of that?
yes,
Well, ma'am, you're now aware that Bob Durst wrote the cadaver note, correct?
yes,
And you're aware that Bob Durst has said it's a note that only the killer could have written, correct?
Yes.
What does that mean?
I can't tell you why he said it. I don't know.
Well, ma'am, would it
I
mean
just-
in general language that that means Bob is saying he's the killer?
Okay.
What? Is that a yes, ma'am?
According to what he said, but I.
Yeah, so according to
can't
Bob's
say-
statement, you're saying, yep, that he's saying he's the killer, but you don't know if that's actually true. Is that what you're saying now?
Oh, that's right, exactly.
Okay. Let me continue, ma'am. When was it that you first found out that Bob Durst had changed his version of events, and he was now saying, not only was I in Los Angeles, but I found the body and wrote the note? When did you first find out about that?
Oh my gosh. From Andrew Jarecki, I guess.
Do you know who Emily Altman is? Thank you. I don't know why I'm saying Elaine. Emily Altman is?
Yes.
And did you have a conversation with Bob Durst on July 31st, 2017, in the middle of Emily Altman's conditional examination testimony?
Did I have a conversation?
Yes.
With, I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Did you have a conversation with Bob Durst on July 31st, 2017, which was in the middle of Emily Altman's conditional examination testimony?
Maybe, I don't recall the date.
Now, isn't it true that you had a call, and that during that call, Bob Durst never told you, never admitted that what Emily Altman had said about him being in Los Angeles was true, correct?
Correct, we didn't speak about it.
And at the time of the call, ma'am, you had been watching Emily Altman's testimony, correct?
No, I didn't see her testimony.
No, meaning, I'm saying you watched it live, but you had been following her testimony, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
SG 110, 731-17 jail call.
Your Honor, may we mark this as 226 and 226A?
Yes.
Okay, because I was going to tell
Sorry, Your Honor, hold on.
okay, because I was going to tell you, I went online.
Wait, let me stop this. Let me stop it. I think I gave it the wrong. It should have been SG 110. I'm sorry. I think I said the wrong.
I heard
Did
110.
Did I say
You did
110?
say 110.
Hold on.
The audio didn't play on the question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because I was going to tell you, I went online and the Los Angeles Times for 3 days changed the story because she kept changing her story. I don't know, she looked so confused from July 25th, July 26th, and July 27th. She is not consistent. It's just, no one could even, it doesn't match.
I thought you meant I watched her testimony. I didn't watch her testimony. I went online, he asked me if I knew, and I checked it. I didn't
Ma'am?
see her.
Ma'am, I just asked you very clearly.
If I watched,
No, ma'am, and then I said, did you review the testimony? Did you read any articles about the testimony? And your response was you didn't.
no,
That wasn't true, was it?
I didn't actually, I don't even remember reading anything. Somebody probably told me, and I told him I did all this research, and I didn't, but.
So ma'am, when you're saying, you're quoting, I went online in the Los
Yeah.
Angeles Times for 3 days. She kept changing her story. You had a pretty good recollection about her testimony at the time you were having this call, didn't you?
I had someone else that seen it and told me. I didn't.
And at no time during this call, by the way, did Bob Durst say to you, you know what, actually, Emily is right. I was in Los Angeles, I did find the body. He never told you that, did he?
No, I.
And in fact, ma'am, his defense at the time was the opposite. He was saying, correct, I wasn't in Los Angeles, I didn't write the cadaver note, and I didn't find the body, correct?
Correct.
And that's what he has told you, ma'am, consistently for 20 years, correct?
Told me, yes, outright, yes.
Would it surprise you, ma'am? How do you think that call ended? What do you think the last thing you said to Bob was in that call?
I don't know.
What do you usually say to Bob?
I tell him that I love him. Everything's gonna be okay. Everything will be fine.
I love you, I miss you, is that right?
Yeah.
That's generally how your call...
Everything is gonna be good.
That's generally how your calls end, right?
Yeah.
You and Bob Durst spoke again on October 18, 2017, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember Bob Durst telling you what his theory about the trial was going to be?
I don't.
October 18, 2017, this is going to be SG 111, People's Next in Order.
Your Honor, may they mark those 227 and 227A?
Yeah.
It seems to me it should lean my way, because they gotta get 12 people to say, I'm very, very sure that he killed Susan Berman. Right. Yep. All we gotta do is get a couple of people who say, well, it's not really very clear. He might have killed Susan Berman. He might not have killed Susan Berman.
Ma'am,
Yes. Yes.
do you recall having that conversation with Mr. Durst?
Well, I'm reading it. I don't actually recall it, but it's there.
And now that you've heard it, ma'am, does that sound like conversations you've had with Mr. Durst?
Yes.
And ma'am, would you agree that during this exchange, Bob Durst isn't telling you, hey, listen, I didn't do this thing. I didn't kill her. Correct? He's not saying that, is he?
No, not outright, no. Those.
Ma'am, when specifically, to the best of your memory, did you find out that Kathy Durst had disappeared? Was that after or before you expressed interest in dating Bob Durst?
After. Well, it was the same time. In an elevator.
And ma'am, when did you find out specifically about Morris Black's death?
The newspaper. Yes.
When did you find out that Bob Durst was admitting that he had dismembered Morris's corpse?
In the newspaper? At the same time everyone else would find out, I guess.
When you heard that Bob Durst had admitted to dismembering Morris's body, what was your response?
Probably the same thing I said on tape with Andrew Jarecki, that nobody knows what they're gonna do when they're in a situation. So,
So your response to hearing that Mr. Durst had dismembered Morris Black was to say, well, I'm not in his shoes. Who knows what you do? That was your response?
yes, that was my response.
You had no problem accepting lots of money from Mr. Durst, at least $400,000, after you found out about the dismemberment of Morris Black, correct?
Correct.
Did you tell Agent Perry on March 18, 2015, that you were not surprised because you had cousins in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, who were mobsters who stuffed people in trunks?
Not my cousins, not my family members, but where I grew up
And you said that,
was, I mean, it wasn't something you didn't hear of. It becomes, in that particular neighborhood,
so ma'am, you're telling me that the fact that you had some contact with mobsters who put people in trunks, that that's somehow related to Bob Durst dismembering Morris
I just-
Black after an alleged accidental killing? Is that what your testimony is?
my testimony is, everybody's judged at a clean slate. I could like you and know about you. I'm sorry.
Did you also tell Special Agent Perry that you were going to help Bob write a book about his side of the story?
Yes, I wanted to.
In the end, ma'am, isn't it true that the reason you have not asked Bob Durst questions, specifically about what happened with Kathy, what happened with Susan, what happened with Morris, is because you don't want to know?
No. He says, no.
You discussed issues of love being blind and the differences between acceptance and loyalty during your March 14th interview, 2014 interview with Jarecki and Smirling. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you remember specifically what you told him?
No. I probably said the same thing, that no one knows what they're going to do in a situation.
Did you say, ma'am, as follows? I do think a lot of times love is blind. It is what it is. You know, I look at stories and you read the news and you read about these parents who stand by their kids, whether it's husbands or wives that stand by them, and you can't figure out why. You can't. You know, I do a lot of things. I told you. I didn't ask Bob questions. Probably most of them was why. And his answer is, well, because that's the way it is. It happened that way. But yeah, I guess, I mean, you see someone, and I don't know, maybe it's not blind. Maybe it's an acceptance and it's loyalty, or I don't know if I'm getting them confused. If loyalty is being blind, but it could be, I guess, both. I'm partial when you know someone already. Those are your words, correct?
Correct.
And you're basically saying, ma'am, that love is blind, and that in essence you love Bob, and so you didn't ask. Correct?
I said it was an acceptance after I found out Jarecki took my hand. I told Andrew that either I had to accept what he did with Morris Black, or you don't accept it, and that was it. It happened, it's over, and obviously
Ma'am,
wasn't the thing to do.
Would you agree that your relationship with Bob has been very financially profitable for you?
After 20 years, I don't. It's not what it was based on.
Okay.
Okay. It's 20
Ma'am,
years ago.
Have you previously said that Bob Durst is not a violent person and doesn't have a mean bone in his body?
Yes, I said that.
Did you say during your March 10, 2014 interview with Jarecki and Smirling, well, looks like your friend is in trouble. This is the question, and this is what he did. And I was like, well, I don't know. I said, I don't really think it could possibly happen. I didn't think it was, you know, because he doesn't have a mean bone in his body. So as people, I've never seen it ever. Did you say that?
Yes, I did.
Is that your position today as you sit here, that he doesn't have a mean bone in his body and that he's not violent?
Yes.
Have you seen any of the statements that Bob Durst made in the Jinx about how he would physically and emotionally abuse his wife, Kathy?
There was, I know from reading a book that he pulled her by the hair. That's really.
So, ma'am, you're saying that you only know of one isolated instance of domestic violence involving your best friend and person you want to share a love nest with?
I said no, you see, just keep going. it's what somebody sees. Like, I don't know, there's people who have been married and they were terrible people, and then they remarry someone and then they're not terrible people. It's how he treated me. How he treated me is what I see. I can't say what he did 40 years ago.
Right, you never lived with him, correct?
Correct,
You've never lived with Bob, correct?
correct,
Have you ever had there's no sexual relationship, correct?
correct.
So your relationship consists of you and Bob talking, correct? And Bob sending you lots of money. Is that
Well, like
right?
somewhere else, we go to dinner, we spend time together. So
Okay.
it's not just like, hi, my name is, send me money.
I want to talk about your contacts with Bob's attorneys.
Okay.
Have you had repeated contacts with Mr. Durst's attorney?
Not since 5 years ago, I guess. I don't.
Really?
I mean, whenever I was called as a witness,
You've had no contact with any of his attorneys since then? Since 2017 when you were called as a witness?
correct.
Are you sure?
I mean, I would write. They don't write you back. I just wanted to make sure he's okay. But no one
Ma'am?
really gets back to me.
Did you say during a March 4th, 2019 jail call that you mentioned sending, quote, screens to Kat? Who's Kat?
It was their attorney. I wanted to send something that Nick sent me. So,
One of Bob's attorneys, correct?
correct.
So ma'am, when I just asked you if you had any contacts with his attorneys and you told me you haven't had any contacts for 5 years,
I thought you meant they contacted me. I kind of reached out. I just said that. I would also see how Bob was doing, and nobody would get back to me, but I said things that I thought were important. Nick harassing me was important.
ma'am, did Bob discuss with you the issue of you not providing any damaging information to the authorities? Has he ever done that?
No,
Has he ever specifically mentioned that my office likely would be in touch with you and that his lawyer, Steve, has told you 27 times that you don't tell them shit? Has he ever said that to you?
no. Who's
Did-
Steve?
Did he clarify that your kids wouldn't talk to the authorities either?
No.
SG 092 520-2015 jail call.
Your Honor, may we mark this as 228 and 228A?
Yes.
Also, I was just speaking to my friend Jeanne Clarke, who lives someplace near LA, and seemingly the DA is going through the list of everybody I've been calling from jail to contact them. You should expect to get a call, maybe you've already gotten a call, from the DA wanting to talk to you about, what you said to me and stuff. Steve has told you 27 times that you don't tell the shit.
Right, I know.
Good at that. I imagine your kids are good at it too. Alrighty, hey, listen, I'm gonna get all.
We don't answer the phone unless it's you. We don't answer the phone. Listen, did you get mail today?
Ma'am,
Yes.
that was Bob Durst telling you to make sure that Steve, his lawyer, that you've been told that you're not to tell me and investigators shit, correct?
I guess. I don't really remember, but it's there.
Ma'am, and your response was, I know. What did you mean by I know?
I know, don't talk to anybody. I don't know. I had to get a lawyer. That was,
Let me say it again, ma'am. What did you mean when Bob Durst is telling you that you're not to tell them shit? That that's the message through Steve? And are you saying you don't know Steve Rabinowitz to be one of Bob
okay.
Durst's lawyers?
Okay, I remember him. I just couldn't think of Steve.
Does that now ring a bell?
I remember Steve. I didn't speak to him much, but yes.
You did talk to him, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Did you talk to him 27 times?
No.
You talked to him a lot though, correct?
I don't think so.
Well, do you know why Bob Durst was telling you that you've obviously spoken to Steve 27 times and that you know not to tell them shit? Do you know why he would say that?
Objection,
I
Your Honor.
don't have
Objection.
anything.
Yes?
Objection, Your Honor. 352, argument calls for an opinion. It also does not, I don't want to make a speaking impediment.
Okay. Let's discuss it over without the jurors. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let you go on your break till 1:30. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case.
Yes. I don't know, not so far.
All right, jurors have departed. I have a note from Juror 12 that during the sidebar break, Ms. Giordano tried to engage the jury. So, someone
Mr.
needs
what,
to
Your Honor?
converse with the jury. She tried to converse.
Ms. Giordano.
Ms. Giordano, the witness. So, she's your witness. I need to tell her not to.
Will do.
Okay, now, the objection, so will you explain your objection, please? Oh, the question was that, that Mr. Durst told her not to tell them shit. The question, well, that's a preface, and the question is, do you know why he would say that? And explain your objection.
Using Mr. Durst's words to have her draw a conclusion as to why he would say something which is in complete conflict with what she did, because she spoke to every policeman that ever asked her a question, Your Honor. She spoke to the New York police, she spoke to the FBI, she spoke to LAPD, she spoke to Mr. Lewin. So basically, they're trying to impugn Mr. Durst through her testimony. If and when Mr. Durst testified, Mr. Lewin will be free to ask Mr. Durst why he said that. But to ask her why Bob said that to her, it doesn't really follow, Your Honor. It's not relevant why she thinks Bob said that. She talked. Why is it relevant why Bob said that?
Court want to respond?
And that, well, wait just a second. He also mischaracterized what Mr. Durst said. And Mr. Durst didn't tell her, don't talk to him. He said, I'm sure Steve has told you 27 times, probably, that you don't tell them shit.
Yes, Mr. Lewin?
Okay, does court
Go
want to
ahead.
respond?
No, the tentative would be to overrule the objection.
Then-
Go ahead.
No, and I don't, if the
I
court
mean, I
doesn't
think
hear
that
from
to
me, I don't
me,
need.
I don't want to, I think better you explain it than I. So
Okay.
you go ahead.
Sure, Your Honor. So, what's going on is she's basically saying, and she's repeated, that they don't have these conversations. That's number one. Here's Bob Durst literally telling her that he is sure that his lawyer has told her 27 times not to say shit. I don't know how Mr. DeGuerin can, even with a straight face, make the statement that he just said, that, well, Bob's just repeating what his lawyer said. It is very clear Bob Durst is attempting to interfere with a witness, and she is acknowledging, saying, I know. Then he even asks, are the kids good with it? And she says, oh yes, we don't even answer the phone, etc. So this goes to two relevant areas. Number one, it goes to demonstrate that this witness is deliberately hiding and making clear and making sure that she does not say anything that is inculpatory of Mr. Durst. That is consistent with her testimony where I've had to impeach her.
And that's relevant because Mr. Durst did these things and she knows it.
Yes, correct.
And he's instructed her because he knows it also. It's his consciousness of guilt.
It's his conscious guilt, absolutely, and it's her agreement that in essence she is going to interfere by not providing the information that she has, and that she is going to make sure that she does what she can do and that her kids do what she can do to subvert the judicial process.
So it seems. Go ahead, Mr. Chesnut.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that she's going to subvert the process, Your Honor, they had to hit her once to get her to talk and twice to shut her up. She spoke to them multiple times, answered every question, did not evade a question, and they have now established to the jury through the playing of it that that's the conversation. Her opining on what Bob means is just cumulative at this point, Your Honor.
Well,
and it's not an expression. The words are perhaps consciousness of guilt, but asking her to interpret the words, I don't understand where that is relevant to the jury's determination of Bob's consciousness of guilt.
Let me have one last thing.
It's partially about her, but it's more about Bob.
Yeah, let me ask one last thing.
Yeah.
The problem is that the first thing I asked her was, what did you mean by I know? She would not give an answer that makes any sense. So now what you have to do is she has adopted Bob's statement. So when Bob says to her this information, she says, I know. So now I'm saying, okay, you don't know what you meant by I know. What did you take Bob Durst's statement to mean when he said it to you? Completely relevant for the two reasons the court said. This is relevant, probative, important information.
Don't tax our reporter.
Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
You get so excited.
I get fired up.
Mr. Chesnut?
Your Honor, when she says, I know, it may be that she knows that Steve has told her 27 times, don't tell them.
That's another inference that can be drawn, but I think that
And
Mr. Lewin's inference is certainly a reasonable inference, and just as there's a different explanation, it's ambiguous. But I'm not going to adopt one meaning or the other. I'll let the evidence come out, and you can argue what it means. But I do believe it is relevant. I do not believe it's cumulative. I do believe it is probative. She's involved in escaping. She's involved in communication with other witnesses. Not only is she not cooperating, she's talking to another witness, which shows another consciousness of guilt as far as her relationship with and communications with Chavin. So this is clearly at Mr. Durst's behest. So it's not about her consciousness. Ultimately, it's about his consciousness. So that's why it's relevant.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, recess.